What is the question? Here it is. How can a sinner be right with God so as to escape eternal hell and enter eternal heaven? That's the most important question. How can a sinner be right with holy God so as to escape eternal hell and enter eternal heaven? Borrowing the language of Romans, how can God be just and the justifier of sinners? How can a holy, just God declare sinners righteous and acceptable to Him and His heaven? How can a man be right with God? That's the great moral dilemma of human existence. Because it determines your eternity. How can an infinitely holy God accept sinners? How can they be right with Him so as to escape eternal hell and enter eternal heaven? That's the question answered in Isaiah 53. In the New Testament era, the world was full of slaves. Tens of millions of slaves existed in the world of the New Testament, in the Mediterranean world. The Apostle Paul wrote 13 of the 27 New Testament books, so he wrote a lot of it. Then they have the gospel writers who wrote the Gospels and the book of Acts in the case of Luke, and then the other writers. All the New Testament writers, you could pile them all together. Not one of them wrote a treatise on the abuses of slavery. None of them wrote a epistle on human trafficking or on sex trade or on the social disasters of drugs and drunkenness. They referred to sins, the sins of the culture. But when Paul sat down to write his opus magnus, he wrote a massive treatise that sits in the middle of the New Testament that answers this question: how can a sinner be right with holy God so as to escape eternal hell and enter eternal heaven? And that treatise is called the Book of Romans. All the rest of the New Testament points to that same question because, listen to me, the Bible was written to answer that question. The whole Bible was written to answer that question. The answer just comes into clear summation form in the New Testament in Romans and in the Old Testament in Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53 is the condensed version of Romans. Paul could have answered a lot of other questions that people were asking. There were abuses in the ancient world. There were all kinds of injustices. They didn't have justice the way we have justice today. It was a cruel, difficult world. Parents could kill their female children with impunity. I mean, it was a world full of things that could have been addressed on a social level. But the whole of the Bible is focused on one question: how can a sinner be right with God so as to escape eternal hell and enter eternal heaven? By the way, Isaiah and Paul gave the same answer. The same answer. Old Testament, New Testament, same answer. Here's the answer: the sinner can be right with God because the servant, the slave of Jehovah, became a substitute and suffered the judgment of God in the sinner's place. He died in our place. To borrow the words of Isaiah 53, He was wounded for our transgressions. God placed His judgment wrath toward sinners on His servant, the substitute, who died a vicarious death. Now, that's the heart of the message of the Bible.